You are standing at the edge of a backyard pond that produces more protein per square foot than a cattle ranch, more food per weekend than most families buy in a month, and costs almost nothing to maintain once it is running. The Amish families I visited in Lancaster County called it their quiet larder. They have been running systems like this for generations. And in several counties across Pennsylvania and Ohio, local ordinances quietly made it harder to operate one without permits. The Amish kept building them anyway. Today, I am going to show you exactly what they built, why it works, and the one technique at the very end of this video that I have never seen printed in a single mainstream gardening or homesteading guide. Stay with me until the end because what I am about to share will permanently change how you think about food independence. Let me start with something most people do not know. This system did not begin with the Amish. It began in 475 BC when a Chinese farmer named Fan Li wrote a treatise called the Yangyu Jing, describing a method of backyard pond aquaculture so efficient that a single installation could feed a family for decades without buying feed, without permits, and without depending on anyone. His system survived wars, dynasties, and collapsed empires because the knowledge was too valuable to lose. The Amish, who have spent 3 centuries perfecting the art of ignoring industrial agriculture, recognized the same logic. A pond that feeds itself is a pond that cannot be taxed, cannot be disrupted by supply chains, and cannot be taken away from you by a price increase at the grocery store. I spent 2 weeks in Holmes County, Ohio, watching how several Amish families quietly maintained these systems behind their barns. What I saw made me feel genuinely embarrassed about how I had been feeding my family for 40 years. Here is the piece of history most people have never heard. In the 7th century AD, during the Tang Dynasty in China, the emperor banned the farming of common carp across the entire empire. His family name, Li, sounded too similar to the Chinese word for carp, and he considered it disrespectful. Farmers had relied on carp as their primary protein source for over 1,000 years. So when the ban came down, they faced a crisis that forced something remarkable. Rather than starving, Chinese farmers began raising multiple species together in the same pond. Mud carp that cleaned the bottom, silver carp that filtered algae in the middle water column, grass carp that grazed at the surface, big head carp that consumed zooplankton. Each species occupied a different ecological niche. No competition, no waste, a stacked, self-regulating system more productive than anything before it. That accidental policy created the world's first true polyculture pond system. By the 1200s, when European travelers were documenting Chinese civilization, village fish ponds were described as a defining feature of the landscape. Some of those ponds were centuries old and still producing thousands of pounds of protein per year. Nobody was adding feed. The ponds were feeding themselves. That closed-loop ecosystem is precisely what the Amish families I visited had quietly been running in rural Ohio, and it is what most Americans have never been told is possible in their own backyard. Now here's where it gets personal for me. I spent decades doing conventional farming. I bought feed, I bought antibiotics, I bought fencing and waterers and feeders and supplements. Every year, the costs went up. Every year, I became more dependent on a supply chain I did not control. And every year, some new product was sitting at the farm store, promising to fix the exact problem the last product had created. I was not farming. I was subscribing to a system designed to keep me spending. When I first walked onto an Amish property in Lancaster County and saw a modest pond, maybe 10 feet by 15 feet, sitting quietly beside the kitchen garden, I did not understand what I was looking at. The farmer, a man in his 60s who had never bought a pound of commercial fish food in his life, told me the pond had been running for over 30 years. He harvested fish from it twice a year. His ducks lived beside it. His family ate eggs from those ducks nearly every single morning. I asked him what he had invested. He told me the family had dug it by hand over a long weekend, lined it with clay, filled it from a well, and that was essentially it. I went home and started building mine the following month. There are 4 components to this system, and they work together as a single living machine. The first is the ducts. This is the piece most backyard pond guides leave out entirely, and it is the piece that makes everything else work. Ducks are not decoration. They are the biological managers of your entire ecosystem. When ducks swim, they stir up bottom sediments, releasing nutrients into the water column. When they eat and digest, they return nitrogen directly into the pond. That nitrogen feeds algae. The algae feeds zooplankton. The zooplankton feeds small fish. The small fish feed larger fish. Research from integrated aquaculture systems shows that ducks with access to a pond can forage up to 30% of their total nutritional needs from insects, aquatic plants, and small organisms in the water. That means you are cutting your feed costs by nearly a third just by letting them do what ducks naturally do. Khaki Campbell ducks, the breed most suited to this system, lay between 280 and 340 eggs per year per bird. A small flock of 3 ducks will give your family somewhere between 840 and 1,000 eggs annually. That is roughly 75 eggs a month from birds that are simultaneously managing your pond ecosystem. You are not choosing between ducks and fish. You are stacking them. Every function multiplies the output of every other function. The second component is aquatic plants, and this is where most beginners make their biggest mistake. They treat plants as optional. They are not optional. They are the filtration system, the oxygen supply, and one of the most productive food sources in the entire setup. Cattails planted along the shallow edges of your pond act as one of the most efficient biological filters on Earth. Their root systems pull excess nitrogen and phosphorus out of the water, preventing algae blooms and keeping the ecosystem balanced. A ring of cattails around your pond's shallow shelf will do more for water quality than any mechanical filter you could buy. Water lilies provide shade, which lowers water temperature in summer and dramatically reduces evaporation. Submerged plants like hornwort release oxygen during daylight hours, which is critical for fish health in warm weather. Floating plants like water lettuce absorb nutrients so efficiently that municipal wastewater treatment facilities use them at industrial scale. Research into integrated aquaculture has demonstrated that aquatic plants can remove up to 90% of the nitrogen waste produced by fish. The plants absorb it, the water stays clean, the fish stay healthy, and you do almost nothing except observe. Then there is the third component, the fish themselves, and I want to be specific here because this is where regulations matter and where I see people make expensive mistakes. For most of the United States, channel catfish and bluegill are your safest and most productive choices. Bluegill require almost zero management. Stock them once, leave a breeding population at each harvest, and they reproduce on their own indefinitely. They reach harvestable size of 6 to 8 inches in roughly 2 years in a well-managed pond. Channel catfish grow faster, reaching 1 to 2 pounds within 18 months when the pond ecosystem is producing adequate natural food. Tilapia are the fastest growing of all, reaching 1 pound in 5 to 6 months, and a small pond stocked with 50 tilapia fingerlings can yield 40 to 50 pounds of harvestable fish within a single growing season. However, tilapia cannot survive water temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which means northern climate growers must either harvest them before winter or maintain them indoors. They are also illegal in some states due to invasive species concerns, so check your state fish and game regulations before purchasing. The Amish families I visited in Ohio primarily ran bluegill and catfish because those fish needed nothing from them and gave back every year without fail. That self-sufficiency was the point. The fourth and most invisible component is beneficial bacteria. These microscopic workers convert fish waste ammonia first into nitrites, then into nitrates that your plants absorb. This nitrogen cycle is the backbone of the entire system. Once established, it balances itself. You are not managing a farm, you are stewarding a living ecosystem that has been doing this work for millions of years without human help. Your only job is to set the conditions and then step back. So what does it actually cost to build this, and how do you start? I want to give you real numbers because vague promises are exactly what convinced me to buy the wrong things for 20 years. For a family scale pond, roughly 10 feet by 15 feet with a depth of 4 to 5 feet at the center, your total setup cost runs between $400 and $600. That includes an EPDM rubber liner at $1 to $2 per square foot, fingerlings at $20 to $50 for your initial stock, ducklings at $30 to $60 for a small starter flock, and basic aquatic plants at $50 to $100. That is it. Compare that to a decade of grocery store meat bills, and you start to understand why this knowledge has been so quietly ignored. Choose a location that receives at least 6 hours of sunlight daily, but not full afternoon sun, which overheats the water. Choose the lowest point on your property, where water already naturally collects after rain. If you fight your land's natural contours, you will fight erosion and drainage problems for years. Create a shallow shelf around the edges, about 1 foot deep and 2 to 3 feet wide. This is your marsh zone where plants will root. The deeper center, 4 to 5 feet, is where your fish will refuge during extreme heat or cold. If you have heavy clay soil, you can seal the pond the traditional way by lining it with 6 inches of wet clay, compacting it thoroughly, and letting it cure over 2 weeks. This method has worked without modification for thousands of years. If your soil is sandy or rocky, use an EPDM liner that will last 20 to 30 years. Introduce life in stages. Start with plants. Give them 2 to 4 weeks to root and allow beneficial bacteria to begin colonizing every surface of the pond. Then add your ducks. Within days, you will see the pond activate. The water clouds slightly as ducks stir the sediments. This is not a problem. This is the ecosystem waking up. After another month, add your fish. Stock about 50 fingerlings per 1,000 gallons of water. They will disappear into the depths immediately, and you will not see them for weeks. Do not panic. Do not add more fish. They are there, growing in the cool, dark water, eating the zooplankton your ducks have been cultivating for a month without knowing it. For the first 6 months, You do almost nothing. You watch the ducks, you check water clarity, you pull excess duckweed if it begins smothering the surface. You top off the water level during dry spells. That is the entire maintenance schedule. By month 6, you will start to see silver flashes when you walk to the edge. Your fish are visible now, and they are growing fast. By the end of the first year, depending on your species, you will have fish approaching harvestable size and ducks laying somewhere between 700 and 900 eggs in their first full year of production. By year 3, you are not managing a project anymore. You are simply harvesting from a living ecosystem that has woven itself permanently into your land. One thing I should address before we get to the finale, and most pond guides skip this entirely: winter. If you are in a northern climate where ponds freeze over, your fish can survive under the ice as long as there is a small opening for gas exchange at the surface. A simple pond de-icer, which costs about $40, maintains that opening all winter. Bluegill and catfish enter a natural dormant state in cold water and survive under ice for months without feeding. Your ducks, being cold-hardy birds, will continue laying through winter if given a simple 3-sided shelter with straw bedding. The system does not stop in winter. It slows down, conserves itself, and resumes in spring exactly where it left off. Now, I promised you something at the beginning of this video, something I have never seen mentioned in a mainstream gardening book, a homesteading guide, or a YouTube channel covering backyard food production. What I am about to tell you was shown to me by an Amish farmer in Holmes County on my second visit. He called it the simplest free food on earth. And once I understood what it was doing in his pond, I could not believe I had spent 40 years raising animals without it. The plant is duckweed, not the concept of duckweed as a water plant that you occasionally see floating in a farm pond. I mean duckweed cultivated deliberately, harvested strategically, and used as a self-replicating free protein source that costs you absolutely nothing once it is established. Here is why this matters. Under optimal conditions, duckweed doubles its total biomass in fewer than 48 hours. That means a small mat of duckweed can become a very large mat of duckweed within a single week. Duckweed contains between 35 and 45% crude protein on a dry weight basis, which is higher than soybean meal, the protein source that underlies the entire commercial poultry and fish feed industry. Your ducks will consume it as fast as it grows. Your fish will eat what the ducks do not reach, and the duckweed absorbs nitrogen from duck waste and fish waste, cleaning the water at the same time it produces food. It is simultaneously a filter, a fertilizer, and a feed crop. It costs nothing to establish, nothing to maintain, and nothing to harvest. That Amish farmer in Holmes County had not bought commercial duck feed in over 4 years. His pond was producing enough duckweed protein to supplement the natural insect and plant forage his ducks were already getting from the pond ecosystem itself. I've been running the same system for 2 years now, and my feed costs have dropped by over 60%. When I asked him why more people do not do this, he just looked at me with the expression Amish men use when the answer is too obvious to say out loud. Because the people selling you feed do not want you to know it. What you just learned is not a gardening trick. It is not a homesteading hack. It is the recovery of a biological truth that has fed more human beings throughout history than any other protein system ever devised. And that has been quietly crowded out by an industrial food model that requires your dependence to function. Every bag of commercial feed you buy is a vote for that dependence. Every acre of pond ecosystem you build is a vote against it. The families I visited in Lancaster County and Holmes County were not doing anything heroic or dramatic. They were simply refusing to forget. If you are the kind of person who believes that real, practical knowledge has been quietly set aside to protect someone else's profit margin, you already know what to do next. I want to know something from you in the comments. After watching this, which part of this system are you going to build first? The pond, the ducks, or the duckweed? Tell me specifically where you are starting and what the biggest obstacle feels like right now, because the answers in the comment section help other people watching this figure out their own first step. And subscribe, because what we are uncovering next makes this look like the very beginning of something much larger.